a woman enjoying retirement after a lifetime of hard work.
My mother did very well for herself. She was a very strong-willed woman.
Nina was quirky. I can't tell you how much she loved frogs and Elvis Presley and country music. She just marched to her own drum and did her thing.
Found brutally murdered in her home.
He stabbed her 24 times.
There was blood throughout the house.
It's like living in a bad horror movie.
A dangerous predator eludes police.
She had been sexually assaulted. Our victim potentially knew who the suspect was.
I kept asking them, is this going to be a cold case? And they kept telling me, we're not done yet.
DNA evidence leads to a shocking realization.
It was a match to another murder.
The thought that we had a serial killer here in town scared the hell out of me.
And a suspect no one saw coming.
To call this an unexpected killer is an understatement.
That's like every person's nightmare.
It hit me like a ton of bricks.
Kansas City is a large metropolitan area on the border between Kansas and Missouri.
Kansas City can be a very fun place to be. We love our sports in this city. It's a very friendly place to live.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary on October 29th, 2010, until Kansas City police receive a 911 call about a woman found unresponsive in her home.
A woman called police and said she discovered her mother at the bottom of the basement stairs, and she checked her for vital signs and found she was dead.
When the first officer arrives on the scene, the caller leads them to her 75-year-old mother, Nina Whitney.
I showed them my mother's body laying at the bottom of the stairs. I told the police officers I believe she had just dropped over from a heart attack. And then I called my cousin Kim.
The phone rang and I picked it up, and Paige told me my mother is dead. Paige said she thought maybe Aunt Nina fell down the stairs going to the garage.
While Paige speaks with her cousin on the phone, police take a closer look at Nina's body.
Nina was face down, and there was a shelving unit there with a bunch of glass frogs, and a lot of those frogs had fallen off the shelf on top of her. It initially looks like an accident and a natural death, but when they rolled the victim over, they discovered several stab wounds in her chest. And also what were determined were defensive wounds on her hands, which is something that we see when someone fights back.
Clearly, this is no accident, and detectives arrive to begin a homicide investigation.
When someone's stabbed like the victim was, it usually means there's some sort of emotion tied there because you're actually stabbing someone instead of just shooting them or something like that. Her blouse had been pulled up and there were buttons missing, and they quickly discovered that they're what they believed to be saliva on her breast, which they swabbed. So it felt like this was sort of a sexual in nature homicide.
Police inform Paige that her mother has been murdered.
I don't think I've ever been that stunned in my entire life. It's just, it's so surreal. It's like living in a bad horror movie. I don't know how to describe it. You're just totally and completely stunned.
A lifelong native of the Midwest, Nina Whitney was a woman with humble roots.
My mother was born in South Dakota, and then their family wound up here in Kansas City in the late 40s, early 50s. My mother had a very rough life. My mom's mom left their family, so my mom was left to take care of her younger siblings. She married my father, and my parents divorced when I was about 9 years old. My father left her pretty much destitute, so it was just the two of us. And we struggled tremendously. My mother worked some very hard jobs, and we lived on food stamps.
Eventually, Nina found a stable, well-paying career.
She worked on the assembly line at General Motors here in Kansas City. She managed to buy a house, and she did very well for herself. She was a very strong-willed woman.
Nina wanted a better life for her daughter and encouraged Paige to get an education.
I went into criminal justice at Central Missouri State University, and I was a probation parole officer for 25 years. The older I became, the closer my mother and I became. We spent a tremendous amount of time together. My mother started collecting frogs back in the mid-70s. Ceramic, glass, dishes, clothes, bedding, towels. The entire house was filled, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, with frogs.
Nina's favorite hobby earned her the nickname the Frog Lady.
Nina was quirky. I can't tell you how much she loved frogs and Elvis Presley and country music. She just marched to her own drum and did her thing.
Investigators are stunned that someone would viciously attack this 75-year-old woman in her home.
I was in total shock, truly. She was in her house, minding her own business, not doing anything wrong. Like, how on earth did that happen?
When I found out Nina had been killed, I couldn't imagine who could have done this. I had no ideas.
Detectives interview Paige to narrow down when the murder might have taken place.
Friday, at about 6:45, I decided to call my mother to see what time she wanted to go shopping on Saturday. And that's when she didn't answer the phone. It was extremely unusual for her not to answer the phone. So then I called the cell phone and she didn't answer that either. Then I started to panic. So then I took off and went out south toward her house. And when I got to her house, the porch light was not on, and I knew something was very wrong. So I walked through to the kitchen, and it was dark. So I turned the light on, and there was her body laying at the bottom of the stairs. And I could feel the back of her head, and her head was ice cold. And I called 911. And then it just kind of hit me out of the blue that I was hearing weird noises. So I followed the noise upstairs to the hall bathroom. Both faucets in the tub were running full blast. And I thought, well, that's just really strange because my mother didn't use that bathroom.
Detectives wonder if Nina's killer had turned on the faucets, and if so, why?
The victim's daughter had located the guest bathroom bathtub faucets running, and she had turned those faucets off. So the bathroom was processed for fingerprints and DNA.
In the victim's bedroom, there was like an imprint of where it looked like somebody had been laying on the comforter.
And near the bed, we could see buttons that appeared to be similar to the victim's blouse, as well as a hair roller that was similar to the hair rollers in the victim's hair. So that led us to believe that the victim was assaulted and maybe her blouse may have been torn open at that location.
As every corner of the house is searched for evidence, investigators make a crucial discovery.
We opened up the knife drawer in the kitchen and located a paring knife where the blade was bent and there was blood at the base of the blade near the handle. That could mean that somebody had tried to wipe it clean.
Forensics bag the knife for further analysis and process the house with luminol, which can indicate the presence of blood.
The luminol tells us that somebody was moving around in that house with some amount of blood on them. We got that blue glow in the victim's bedroom, bathroom, hallway, living room, and the kitchen.
The front door was unlocked, and we didn't find any sign of forced entry, which was a big clue for us that our victim potentially knew who the suspect was.
There's no reason for anyone to hurt her. And my mother was not a very social person at all. She had no family other than me here in town that would be in and out of the house.
Paige points to one detail detectives could not have determined from their search.
There was a shelf by the front door where her cell phone always was, so she could take it when she went out the front door, and it was missing.
Had the killer snatched Nina's cell phone? Police request a trace on it, while officers go door to door looking for witnesses.
One of my other detectives found a party down the street that had seen a white male in the neighborhood earlier that day. He was in his 50s, walking with a limp. The witness saw him go to a black Jeep. He saw that car was parked kind of behind the house, about a block away. And so he sees this guy walking and kind of looking around. And so he just kind of mentally noted it. He kind of looked like he was probably up to no good.
Could the suspicious man be Nina Whitney's killer? As they start to track him down, detectives catch a break.
We found that Nina's phone was still on and still being used in South Kansas City. We were able to do surveillance and observe the person using our victim's cell phone.
Coming up, a break in the case reveals a potential serial killer.
We had another homicide.
There were zip ties that have been used for bindings.
He's terrorized an entire community.
And a grieving daughter takes matters into her own hands.
I did feel a need to help them investigate my mother's homicide.
If she didn't get the answers, then she kept asking.
In my gut, I just knew that was him.
Detectives investigating the vicious stabbing of 75-year-old Nina Whitney believe the killer stole her cell phone. Now, police have traced the phone to an address in South Kansas City and rush to apprehend the suspect.
We did kick his door in, and when we took the suspect into custody, we found that he had the phone on his person.
The suspect goes by the nickname Lil Mickey. Police demand to know how he came into possession of a murdered woman's cell phone.
He told us he was walking down the street pretty close to our victim's house and found that phone laying in the grass. He said he didn't make the most money in the world and was just glad to have a cell phone that was working and started using the cell phone.
Skeptical of his story, investigators ask him if he killed Nina Whitney.
Little Mickey adamantly denied being involved in any sort of violence with our victim or anything where someone was harmed or killed. We asked him, could you have bought this phone off somebody else? Did you get it from a person?
Despite hours of questioning, Lil Mickey stands by his story.
His story was, I found the phone there in the grass and picked it up.
Police want to know his whereabouts at the time of the murder.
Based on her lights being off in the house, we believe Nina's murder happened during daylight hours. And he did provide an alibi, a female that he had been with that day.
Investigators have no grounds to detain Lil Mickey any longer, but they obtain a sample of his DNA just in case.
He wouldn't seem like he would have a motive to commit this type of crime, but we still had to do our due diligence.
The next day, police tracked down the woman he used as his alibi.
So we talked to her. The information she was able to provide, it matched up with what he had been saying.
With Lil Mickey looking unlikely as the killer, detectives turned back to the theory that Nina knew her attacker.
It was obvious that she had let someone in the house because there was absolutely no forced entry.
We had to look at Nina's history and try to figure out who she would have let into the house. And we also had the witness that had seen a white male in the neighborhood. My supervisor thought the composite sketch would be a good thing to pursue in this case. The witness willingly came down to police headquarters and met with our sketch artist. She sat with him and gave a pretty good-looking composite sketch of what he believed the party looked like that he saw that day. We showed Paige that picture, and she looked at it for a long time, but didn't necessarily jog her memory about who it could possibly be.
The individual did not look familiar to me at all. I could not, for the life of me, think of anyone who fit that description.
Investigators can't be certain if the man seen by Nina's neighbor is the killer. But with few quality leads, police decide to release the sketch to the media.
I was the publisher and editor of the Cass County Democrat-Missourian. We all know that police sketches are an inexact science. However, I think they can be very useful. So we had run the sketch in the newspaper to put that sketch out to a larger audience.
As the sketch goes public, detectives work with Paige to come up with a list of people that Nina would have had a reason to let into her home.
She'd had quite a bit of work done on the house in the last year or so there had been lots of people in and out working on the house.
Maybe someone that is a predator did work inside her house and decided that she would be a good victim. Paige went back into Nina's home and went through all of her records to show us dates and times when she had stuff done at her house.
The detectives got all that information from me and questioned everyone who had been in and out of that house.
My squad started working to collect DNA from anyone that we thought had contact with Nina. And I think we collected about 40 to 50 samples. Honestly, most people were willing to provide their DNA to us when we explained that this was an elderly woman that was brutally murdered. If there was someone that maybe we thought was fishy or involved or could potentially be the suspect, DNA is good to rule people out in cases like this.
The forensics lab will compare the scores of samples to the DNA recovered from Nina's body.
It'd be nice as a detective to get DNA results like they do on TV, 5 seconds later, but it was about a month after the homicide when we got our results back. My boss called me and she said that we had a DNA hit. So I thought that, well, if there's a DNA hit, then we'll be able to find a suspect. But that wasn't the case because it was unknown DNA.
The DNA does not match the dozens of samples collected by homicide investigators.
Everything from the mailman to Little Mickey to contractors that had been inside her house. It rules them out, absolutely. But the DNA profile that was found was a match to another murder almost 2 years to the day in Harrisonville, Missouri. So we knew at that point that this was not the first time that this suspect did this. And that wasn't something I expected. It was a big deal. What concerned us was that we did have a serial killer type situation.
One month after the murder of Nina Whitney, DNA taken from the crime scene as matched to another homicide in the national database.
It was a match to another unsolved murder in Harrisonville, Missouri. It's a smaller town about an hour south of Kansas City. Kara Jo Roberts was found inside her home in the bathtub, shot in the head with the bathtub running, just like Nina. It seemed like a sexually motivated homicide, and with the tub running, that matches Nina at our scene.
Police decide to keep this explosive new information under wraps.
At that point, we were trying to keep this information close to the chest because the suspect didn't know that we knew both crime scenes were connected. We did not want that in the public.
Detectives even withhold this new development from the victims' loved ones, including Paige.
I kept asking them, when is this going to be a cold case? And they kept telling me, well, not yet. We're not done yet. And I don't know what they were doing, but I know they were doing things behind the scenes.
Investigators head to Harrisonville to get briefed on the Kara Jo Roberts case.
Just reading through a case file doesn't give you the whole story. So to talk to an investigator that actually worked that case, it helps paint a better picture of what happened in the other investigation.
I was one of the detectives from Kansas City at the time that was sent to work on this case. Kara Jo and her husband lived right there in the small town. They had a kid. Seemed like a very happy relationship. Just your normal, happy family.
The Roberts family was devastated by a horrific tragedy on November 5th, 2008.
Her husband found Kara in the bathroom. She wasn't wearing any clothes. There were obvious gunshot injuries. She was in the bathtub, and the bathtub was running. There were zip ties that we speculated at the time had been used for bindings.
At the Kara Jo Roberts scene, we found 2 different white-colored zip ties that appear to have been used but cut. We also found a roll of duct tape. On both the zip ties and the duct tape, we had male DNA.
There was DNA found on Kara's body, and there was indications given by the medical examiner that she had been sexually assaulted.
Detectives investigating Nina's murder ask for a rundown of the suspects in Kara Jo's case.
Based on the fact of no forced entry, very much kind of angled towards us believing that the husband may have had something to do with this. A domestic violence type homicide is usually spur of the moment, rage and kind of action, but this could have been a situation where he was trying to control her physically with the bindings, and then it escalated.
Kara Joe's husband claimed he found his wife dead when he got home from work and immediately called 911.
From the time she was last seen to the time when her husband came home and found her was a very tight window. It was only like 45 minutes. Her husband gave what was kind of a complex alibi, but when we went to talk to his friends who were involved in that alibi, they were able to corroborate everything.
DNA testing at the time also cleared Kara Joe's husband, and no other viable suspects were identified. The investigation went cold until the DNA connection to Nina Whitney's murder revives the case 2 years later.
Nina's homicide was a lifeline to the Kara Joe Roberts case. We have double information, and we have a bigger picture of what's going on in both of these acts.
What we have to do at that point is start doing what's called victimology. You basically have to understand the circle of Kara Joe's world, and you look at the circle of Nina's world. You know these two cases are linked, and you want to find those commonalities in between.
What was really interesting was all the stuff in the Kara Joe Roberts case that matched up to Nina's case. As far as the tub running, we had a lot of different theories, but our main one was if our suspect was going to commit a rape, they would want to use that tub to wash away evidence after the act. In Nina's case, he turns on the water to try to maybe get her body up into the bathtub. He may have not been able to drag her body up those stairs. Our witness down the street sees this guy walking with a limp, and we thought the limp may have hindered him from getting her body back up to the tub. So just like our case, the Kara Joe Roberts case had someone down the street that saw someone in the neighborhood.
The witness had seen a Jeep, had seen a male going to the Jeep, and that male may have been limping.
And it looked like they were up to no good.
Despite the telling parallels, police can't find anyone connected to both Nina and Kara Joe.
That was not the answer that we wanted as detectives, because that meant that it was somebody totally random. A random person coming in and taking their life. That's like every person's nightmare.
In a case like this, where you know there's a suspect out there that could do this again, it makes it even more urgent to try to catch the person. So you're grasping at straws, looking for any leads, any information, any help you can get to try to solve a case like this.
You can only work with what information you've got coming in, and there wasn't any new information coming in at that point.
Running out of options, detectives turn to the one person who might be able to connect the two victims.
Detective Blank called me, and he said, "Paige, I have something to tell you." And what he told me was more horrifying than my mother's homicide. That scared the hell out of me.
Detectives investigating the stabbing death of Nina Whitney have informed her daughter Paige about a stunning development.
Detective Blank told me that there was a DNA match from the saliva they found on my mother's shirt to DNA that they found on Kara Roberts in Harrisonville. Kara had been raped, put in the bathtub, and then shot in the back of the head. The thought that we had a serial killer here in town is enough to cause panic for every female in this city.
We provided information from both crime scenes to Paige. And that's not something we would normally tell our victim's daughter. But in this case, Paige was a probation and parole officer. She is savvy in law enforcement, so we thought we could trust her with that information. We wanted to see if anything in her memory would be jogged to try to figure out if there's any common people, common locations that both victims would have known or gone to.
At the time, I thought it had to be someone who targeted my mother specifically. But when they showed me the evidence in Kara's case, there's just a million things to think about when you're trying to come up with a profile for someone like that.
There wasn't much there that seemed to be connected between the two victims. There wasn't an aha moment in that meeting at all.
It's been 5 months since the murder of Nina Whitney, and investigators are desperate for a break. they turn back to the composite sketch of the man with the limp seen close to Nina's house.
I wasn't necessarily a believer in the composite sketch thing. People make their own determination on whether they think the information they have is valuable to a case. They see that sketch and they decide, well, this guy's got glasses and the guy I know doesn't have glasses. And so the danger in that is that that person may have information, but that person may be turned off by the sketch.
We had run the sketch in the newspaper, but really that sketch hadn't brought in a lot of leads.
Despite their reservations, police hope that more people will see the sketch on billboards around the city, and someone will identify the suspect.
They were able to put that picture along 71 Highway, along with our tips hotline. The number of tips that we received on this case based on that sketch were not as numerous as you would think. All of them have to be followed up on, because there could be something there that you're gonna miss if you don't take those tips seriously.
Weeks pass as investigators chase down leads that go nowhere. The lack of progress takes a heavy toll on Nina's family.
I was really angry that she died in her own home in that terror and that panic, helpless and alone and fighting for her life.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I think about my mother's last few minutes of life. I know the neighbor was home next door and nobody heard my mother screaming. I wake up to the sound of her screaming 2, 3 o'clock every morning. It doesn't go away. It does not go away.
There's nothing worse than having to tell a family member, I'm sorry, there's no new information coming in, because they're frustrated. They're of the mindset that, why aren't you out there doing something?
At her wit's end, Paige summons the strength she learned from Nina growing up and takes it upon herself to search for the killer.
The investigation was not moving fast enough to make me happy, so I did feel a need to help them investigate my mother's homicide. I drove around the city and went to every antique shop, every flea market, every thrift store I could think of where she liked to shop.
She was looking for that white male walking with a limp and that black Jeep. And Paige was seeing black Jeeps like that everywhere.
I would take pictures of all the cars that looked like black Jeeps and all the license plates on those vehicles and forwarded all of those to the detectives.
Paige made it her job to be involved, and if she didn't get the answers, then she kept asking.
I can't even explain to you how badly I needed to know who murdered my mother.
Despite Paige's efforts, 6 months after her mother's death, the investigation starts to go cold.
Those kind of unsolved cases in Kansas City leave an entire metro area on edge. As the days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, how do you keep that case alive within the pages of your newspaper? Most of our weekly papers did not include an update because there was nothing to update in the case.
And I kept thinking, this is going to be a cold case. I'm never going to figure it out. I'm never going to figure it out.
You always hope for them to get information to catch a suspect quickly, but I just couldn't fathom who would have done it. I had no suspects in mind.
I drove around and took pictures of the billboards because I wanted to make sure I got pictures of them before they had taken them down. But the sketch concerned me because I don't know if that description was accurate. I thought there's just so many questions that I will never have answers to.
Suddenly, 1 month later, Paige has a realization.
May 26th, 2011, I was driving down 71 Highway in rush hour traffic, and I just happened to glance up and look at the lower half of the billboard, and I swear to you, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like lightning had come out of the sky and hit me in the head. It literally all fell into place as I'm driving down the highway.
Seven months after the murder of Nina Whitney, her daughter Paige has just been struck by a mind-blowing realization.
I was driving down 71 Highway, and I just happened to glance up at the billboard. Prior to that, when they showed me the sketch, the individual did not look familiar to me at all. I just focused on the lower half of his face and the chin, and it's just an epiphany. It was Jeff. Jeff Moreland was a boyfriend that I had for 3 years while we were in college. We met in 1983 at Central Missouri State University, had a relationship for 3 years. Jeff and I met in a criminal justice class. He was as sweet and charming and funny as he could possibly be, and I truly fell head over heels in love with him. Once I got my graduate degree, I became a social worker, and Jeff went on to become a police officer. He loved being a police officer. That was his ideal dream job.
Paige and Jeff broke up after 3 years of dating, much to her mother's dismay.
My mother absolutely adored him. For years after we dated, my mother told me she wished I had married him. I know if he showed up on the doorstep, she would happily have let him in the house.
Could Paige's ex-boyfriend from 2 decades prior really be the sadistic serial killer detectives have been hunting for?
I was so lost in my own head, trying to tell myself that Jeff didn't do it. I kept trying to tell myself that I was wrong. But in my gut, I just knew that was him. At the parole office, I'd mentioned it to a couple of the girls that I work with, and they told me that I should run him through the system. I said, well, that makes sense. So I ran Jeff through the system. And lo and behold, if he didn't have a black Jeep Wrangler registered in his name, and I nearly lost my cookies. And I also found out Jeff had been a police officer in the Grandview Police Department, but Jeff had retired about 5 years prior to my mother's homicide because he'd had Parkinson's.
Does the Parkinson's diagnosis mean Paige's ex could be the man with a limp spotted near Nina's home? Paige brings her findings to detectives.
I told him that Jeff had been a police officer in Grandview and gave him all the information that I had.
Officers look up Jeff Moreland's home address and discover he lives in the same small town as the first murder victim, Kara Jo Roberts.
He lived in Harrisonville, Missouri. So that was the first person during our investigation that matched all of those factors.
Detective Blank said, yep, it could be him.
Detectives know they have to take extra care when investigating an ex-cop.
Harrisonville is a very small community, and Detective Blank told me that Jeff knew every law enforcement officer in the county and that he would find out that he was under investigation.
Investigators decide a direct approach is the best option.
We did not believe that we had probable cause at that point to get a search warrant to get his DNA. So we went down and knocked on his front door. I did tell him, your name's come up in a homicide and we need to get a DNA sample from you. If someone were to tell me that, I'd be like, what homicide are you talking about? That was not Mr. Moreland's reaction. He said, well, I've got to go take my cat to the vet. And he went back inside his house. My gut was telling me that we had our guy, but you need to be sure that this is your guy before you go with your gut.
Police again asked Jeff to provide a voluntary DNA sample.
I ended up calling him and telling him again that, hey, we need your DNA to compare to this homicide, and then we'll be done.
Jeff again claims that he's too busy to provide a sample. A week later, investigators receive an unexpected phone call from the police department Jeff retired from, located just outside Kansas City.
So the sergeant with Grandview Police Department calls us and says that he's been in contact with Jeff Moreland and he provided him a DNA sample. We rushed down there and we made contact with the sergeant. On his desk, he had a pill bottle.
The sergeant provides a strange account of how he obtained Jeff's DNA.
Jeff told him that, I want you to meet me at this gas station along 71 Highway. And Jeff shows up in his black Jeep. And Jeff tells him that Kansas City has come and accused him of being involved in a murder. As he's explaining the story, he takes swabs and puts them in his mouth, and then Jeff hands him this bottle along with my card and says, here, give this to the detectives. We tell the sergeant, that sample's not gonna work. You can't just provide your own sample. And the sergeant sort of indicated, well, we'll just get rid of it in the trash then. We told him, no, we'll take that bottle off his hands and take that from him.
The evidentiary value of this stuff is just worthless. But obviously, we recover it and we examine it.
That DNA was tested, and it did not match our homicide.
The fact that that DNA came back as not a match just didn't surprise me at all. Had he followed protocol, that would have exonerated him. And he very easily could have done that, but he chose not to.
We more and more really thought that we might have had our suspect based on his actions at that point. We all know about serial killers. I was worried that the suspect was going to do this act again.
A few days later, detectives get the call they've been dreading.
I received a phone call. There was a rape that occurred in Harrisonville. But the victim was able to get away, and then she was able to contact police. The victim took the officers to where this event had occurred the day before. It was Jeff Moreland's residence. So my first question is, where's Moreland at now?
When police go to arrest Jeff, he's nowhere to be found.
Detective Blank told me Jeff may have raped a third victim, and he is now on the run. I didn't know if he would be after me. I didn't know if maybe he had figured out that it was me who initially contacted the police. That was a nightmare.
Former police officer Jeff Moreland is the prime suspect in the murders of Kara Jo Roberts and Nina Whitney. Tragically, a third woman has now been attacked, but Jeff has disappeared, and investigators fear he may strike again.
When I heard that he had taken off, I was worried about Paige.
The detectives told me they truly did not know where he had gone or what he knew. I told Detective Blank he would probably find Jeff in Iowa near his family.
As Paige predicted, a trace on Jeff's cell phone leads police to a motel in Iowa.
He had taken a bunch of over-the-counter sleeping pills. He tried to take his own life and then ended up in a hospital in Des Moines.
Jeff survives the suicide attempt, and he is taken into custody by local police.
We headed up there to Iowa to get Mr. Moreland's DNA. We drove all the way back from Iowa with it. We wanted to be sure he wasn't going to get out of custody or bond out or whatever. And then the next morning, we got the DNA results back. We told Paige that his DNA matched both crime scenes. Jeff is, in fact, involved in the murders of Kara Jo and Nina.
It just blows my mind. And it was beyond all comprehension to me. This was 2010 when he murdered my mother. And Jeff and I split up in 1987. I had no idea what Jeff would become. The last time I actually saw Jeff was in 1994. He told me then that he periodically would patrol up and down my mother's street just to make sure that everything was okay. And at the time I thought, oh, that's so sweet. But now looking back on it, I just don't know.
Jeff Moreland is charged with the murders of Kara Jo Roberts and Nina Whitney and the sexual assault of the third victim. Soon after laying charges, investigators learn about the source of Jeff's phony DNA.
We were contacted by Jeff Moreland's ex-wife, and Jeff Moreland had a daughter with this ex-wife, and that daughter was engaged to someone. And that guy said that Jeff had called him out of the blue, and Jeff told him that he needed a sample of his DNA for a paternity test because someone was accusing Jeff of being the father of a kid. And so he provided a DNA sample and gave it to Jeff Moreland.
Then, Jeff tricked the Grandview police sergeant with some sleight of hand.
So the sergeant provided us a formal statement where he said he wasn't able to see Moreland's hands at all times when Moreland was taking a sample of his DNA.
Jeff's attempted deception backfires, only giving prosecutors more evidence against him.
There's nothing for the defense to attack. There's nothing to be argued because the physical evidence was just overwhelming.
I think it also says a lot that Jeffrey Moreland had zero witnesses in his defense at the trial.
He got life without parole plus 50 years consecutive on Kara Roberts' homicide. And then he got 10 years for armed criminal action and 20 years for murder second on my mother's case to run concurrent.
With no trial testimony from Jeff, police and the victims' families are left to piece together exactly what happened to Nina Whitney and Kara Jo Roberts.
What we do know is that Jeff Moreland took Kara Jo's life. My personal opinion is he was driving by and saw her in the yard, and he was in that mode where he was hunting and decided that's his target.
After killing Kara Jo, it seems Jeff developed a taste for murder. He struck again 2 years later.
I believe the day that Nina was murdered, Jeff Moreland simply knocked on the door, and Nina saw who it was and let him in the house. It's not necessarily uncommon for a predator to go after older women because they feel like they are easier victims.
Of course, my mother would let him in. And then at some point, he had to have started forcing her backwards up the stairs. I think when he got her into her bedroom, that he tried to rip her shirt off of her, forced her onto the bed, but she did fight back. She did run. My mother went running down the stairs. He chased her. He stabbed her 24 times. The kill shot was here through the throat.
At some point, he turns on the water to try to maybe get her body up into the bathtub to wash off his DNA.
But at that point, he knew with his Parkinson's acting up that there was no way he was going to be able to take her body back up 2 flights of stairs and put her in a bathtub. And then he went upstairs to clean the knife off, put the knife in the kitchen drawer, and went out through the sliding glass door.
Investigators believe that before he left, Moreland stole Nina's cell phone to throw police off his trail.
He has the presence of mind to grab that phone and throw that phone in the grass a quarter-mile away from Nina's house. He knows that the investigator is going to be caught up in that phone as sort of a way to lead us away from him.
I did not know for 8 months who murdered my mother. The 8 months that I spent not knowing made me insane.
When you have families that do their investigations, sometimes it's not the best. But Paige being involved was actually good in this case because she was actually the person that found Jeff Moreland.
I can't even explain to you how grateful I am. Between my mother's neighbor and the sketch artist, I would have never figured it out. Never would have figured it out if it hadn't been for the 2 of them.
To call this an unexpected killer is almost an understatement. Jeff Moreland terrorized an entire community.
Police speculate that Jeff's forced retirement a few years before the murders may have been the catalyst that set him on the path to kill.
I feel that when he developed Parkinson's and he had his power taken away from him as a police officer, the murders were almost like him getting revenge on the world.
I joined this organization called Parents of Murdered Children and Other Survivors of Homicide Victims. And we're all basically going through the same thing. So it does help to have someone who understands the enormity of what has happened.
I think Nina would want to be remembered as a strong, independent woman who fought to the end. And that's how I'll always remember her.
There are frogs in the stores everywhere. You can't go anywhere without seeing cute little frogs somewhere. I think about my mother all the time when I see things that I know that she would appreciate, or when I hear country music. I think about her a lot.
A young woman with a big heart.
She was the most compassionate, caring, captivating person I've ever met. She was in a very good place in her life.
Murdered in a terrifying attack.
Somebody set the body on fire and left. Her last few minutes of life was pure hell.
Detectives discover a secret affair.
They had started to develop more of a relationship.
We told him straight up, you're the killer, and we're going to have your DNA.
Then uncover a surprising suspect hunting for prey.
The night that she was murdered, she had answered a call.
There was a note The directions were to a fictitious place.
He was trying to trick young women.
A second tragedy sparks terror in the community.
We may be dealing with a serial killer.
I lived in fear. I was terrified to go out at night.
Before a calculating killer is ultimately revealed.
This is not real. This can't be happening. This is crazy.
Just 90 minutes from the bright lights of Nashville, Tullahoma, Tennessee is a quaint city full of Southern charm.
Tullahoma is a very small town. Everybody knows everybody. Your teachers at the high school are the same teachers that taught your grandparents. The community is very close-knit.
The people there are genuine. It's a safe place to live. We don't have a lot of violent crime.
In the early morning of July 2nd, 2012, a grisly crime is discovered that sets the whole town on edge.
I got the call that a couple of younger people were driving down a very, very rural road, and they seen a fire. They were going to put the fire out, but when they went over there, they noticed that it was a body that was on fire and called 911. When I arrived at the scene, several other investigators were there and said, this is real bad. It appeared that foul play was involved. We wasn't sure that she was murdered at this spot. It appeared that somebody may have just pulled over or backed up, dumped the body, set the body on fire, and left.
There were some tire tracks. We couldn't plaster cast them because they were in gravel. I just kind of surveyed what we had. There was no evidentiary value. Where do we go from here?
First responders extinguish the fire, and investigators take a closer look at the scene.
As we worked our way closer to the body, you started to get a sense of, how horrible this actually was.
It's just like something you would see off of a movie. This is not real. This can't be happening. This is crazy. The victim was a young white female, possibly in her 20s.
There was star tattoos behind each one of her ears.
And there was a magnolia leaf tattoo. I remember she had a shirt on. It had something to do with the nursing technical school. She was undressed from the waist down. Body was partially burned and covered in soot. The fire was relegated to her pelvic area.
It led us to believe that there had been a sexual assault. Someone had obviously tried to burn the evidence up.
Her body was already in rigor. I would believe that she was deceased at the time of the fire.
What was very glaring was blunt force trauma to her head.
You could actually feel the broken bones in the skull.
Detectives immediately attempt to identify the young victim.
There was no purse, no cell phone, no license, no vehicle to help us identify who the victim was.
Investigators speak to the couple who made the 911 call.
They didn't know who the person was. They didn't see or hear anyone. It was obvious almost immediately. They didn't have anything to do with this homicide. It was very traumatic for them. They just couldn't believe it.
At the scene, I made the suggestion to put what information we had on social media to help us identify her.
Within a few short hours, local mother of four, Kelly Sharpton, sees the missing persons report posted online.
Mom was at work, and there was a post about a young girl that had been found. When she came across the section that said she had star tattoos, I was told that Mom screamed out in the middle of her office. And then, of course, she called the sheriff's office.
She introduced herself, and we started talking, and the description seemed similar. The tattoos seemed to match.
Kelly instantly heads down to the police station for a formal interview.
When we interviewed Kelly, she was distraught. She was crying, and she identified the body in Todd's office on pictures. The victim was her daughter, Megan Sharpton.
I walked in and I immediately heard my mom sobbing, and I can still hear her to this day. She just said somebody killed her last night. And it took me a second to figure out what she had just said. And then it hit me that she was gone.
24-year-old Megan Sharpton was a bright young woman with a big heart.
She was genuine. She was the most compassionate, caring, captivating person I've ever met. She and I were really, really, really close. She had the best laugh. She was so fun.
I could count on Megan to do anything for me. I knew she was always there. She was absolutely hilarious, very bold, but at the same time, you could tell she didn't want to be the center of attention.
Regardless of who you were, where you were from, she didn't care. She really, truly cared for every single person.
Megan had decided to turn her caring nature into a career.
She was working herself, through nursing school. Megan would have been an amazing nurse. She had her head on straight and was, ready to get going with her career.
Along with her calling, Megan had also found love.
She lived with her boyfriend, Chris. They were together 3 to 4 years. They had the same, group of friends.
She was in a very good place in her life. She had lots of goals to go on to those next levels in school, in her career. Megan was about 2 months away from graduation. She was very excited about it. Never in a million years did I think that somebody would kill her.
Investigators start piecing together a timeline of Megan's last known movements.
I spoke to her that Sunday afternoon. It was about 4 or 5. We would go to Mom's on Sunday and visit and have dinner and just kind of hang out as a family.
But that Sunday was different. Megan said she would be skipping dinner as she had a last-minute job interview.
She said that she would head to Mom's at some point.
But Megan never showed up.
Later on that night, she wasn't there. It wasn't a concern for us. We all thought, okay, well, something else must have come up. She was on her own time, and we'll see her sometime tomorrow.
Tragically, it would only be a matter of hours before Megan is discovered dead and on fire.
I was very much in shock that day. It didn't sink in that somebody killed her. It was just very, very hard to process.
In the interview, Carrie and Megan's mom told us what kind of car she drives. We put a bolo out for that car.
When investigators ask who could have been responsible for Megan's death, her sister doesn't hesitate.
I said, Chris did it. Megan's boyfriend. And that is the only thing that made any sense to me. He asked me, why do you think Chris did it? I thought, Chris and Megan had an up and down relationship. They were like oil and water. They would be hot-headed and tempered at times.
Majority of the time that a female's killed in the United States is someone that knew her. As quick as we could, we want to talk to him.
He is a very hot suspect.
Coming up, police learn Megan's love life is more complicated than it first appears.
Another person had actually been in a relationship with Megan.
Did a dangerous love triangle lead to Megan's death?
When someone is murdered like that, it's got to be a jilted lover.
She had intended to leave him. That would be an absolute motive for murder.
Just when detectives believe they have an airtight case, a new piece of evidence changes everything.
I saw the video, surveillance of that person.
It caught my attention big time.
Never would I have thought it would wind up like this.
Detectives investigating the vicious murder of 24-year-old Megan Sharpton in Tullahoma, Tennessee, have their first suspect, her 25-year-old boyfriend, Chris Farrell.
Chris and Megan, to me, had an off and on relationship. They were both very hot-headed at times, and there were bumps in their relationship.
Once Megan and Chris got together, they were inseparable, but towards the end of Megan's life, the relationship had started growing apart at that point.
As far as Chris is concerned, it was just the only person that was with her on a daily basis. That was the only thing that made sense.
As detectives prepare to bring in Chris for questioning, a fresh lead comes in.
The Bedford County Sheriff's Office had located her car. So I had picked up and rushed to where the car was found at.
The car was sitting out in a rural area between Tullahoma and Shelbyville, Tennessee, approximately 15 to 20 miles away from the crime scene where Megan was found.
This is an odd place, odd way to leave a car. The car was, that of any young person's. It was cluttery, but there was none of her personal effects.
Investigators do find one item that grabs their attention.
There was a note in the vehicle, in a girl's handwriting where Megan was going.
It was directions on how to get to an address.
The next thing was to find this address, but there was no address that fit the note.
The directions were to a fictitious place.
In talking to her mother, I learned that she had left to go to this job. Was this the directions that she was given? Did someone lure her here with the intention of doing harm to her? The way this thing was shaping up is that she was abducted where her car was found. She was killed somewhere else and was found on Awalt Road.
We just sealed that car off and sent it on to the crime lab for DNA testing.
Investigators then head to Megan's apartment to talk to her boyfriend, Chris.
The boyfriend was the first person we looked at. He was distraught. On the night of the murder, Chris had told us that he had left for work, and she had told him before he left she had accepted a job by phone that a girl she had went to school with recommended her for this job, and that she would return in the morning. And in fact, she didn't return. And he became worried, and he had reached out to her mother.
Following up on what Megan's sister, Carrie, had told them, detectives asked Chris if he and Megan had been having any problems.
Chris described him and Megan's relationship as a good relationship, that they had their ups and downs like anybody else, but that he would never hurt Megan.
Detectives are suspicious he might be hiding something. Why else would Megan's sister point the finger at him so readily? They asked Chris to come down to the station for further questioning.
We interviewed Chris, and he was visibly shaken.
When pressed about his relationship with Megan, Chris changes his story.
He was quite honest. He said, that they didn't have the best relationship, that, it'd been somewhat strained. He felt like that maybe she wanted him to have a better job or maybe be more career-orientated.
Megan was getting ready to graduate college and start her career, and I don't think Chris was there at that point in his life. He was still, wanted to be young.
Chris swears he had nothing to do with Megan's death.
Chris's alibi was that he was at work at a local department store where the majority of the night he's going to be on or near some sort of camera.
Chris tells police he left for work at 5 p.m. and was there past midnight. But until his alibi can be confirmed and Megan's time of death is determined, he remains on the suspect list.
From my interview with Chris, I learned that there was another person that lived in the house, Robbie Rosar.
Robbie was one of Chris's friends. He moved in there at the end. My first thought was Robbie hurt Megan. That I'd never met in my life, that I know, nothing about other than what Megan told me. He was a little rough around the edges, but Megan loved everyone.
I reached out that day and I asked him to come in. Robbie was a different person. Robbie was a little darker, little less happy person.
Investigators ask Robbie point blank where he was when Megan was murdered.
Robbie didn't have an alibi. Robbie showed us he had been texting her all night, even in the morning, worried about her.
He said, look, I'm not the killer. I want y'all to find out who killed Megan. And he was very, very adamant.
He wanted to prove his innocence, which was a good indication for me that he didn't do this.
But when detectives ask Robbie about the nature of their relationship, his answer leaves them stunned.
Robbie told me that he had actually been in a relationship with Megan, that they were in fact lovers, and that she had intended to leave Chris. It was a shocker.
Megan had told me a few weeks before her murder that her and Robbie had started to develop more of a relationship versus just friends.
When Chris knew about Robbie, that would be an absolute motive for murder.
And so, again, that's when we thought, did Chris do this? You know, if things got crazy and tensions got high and emotions ran high, this would be a motive for homicide.
A day after 24-year-old Megan Sharpton was violently killed, detectives suspect jealousy could have motivated her murder. Megan was having an affair, but did her boyfriend Chris know?
When someone is murdered like that, you always think it's got to be someone close to her. It's got to be like a jilted lover.
We brought Chris back in the interview room after speaking with Robbie, and we kind of dropped that bombshell on him just to see his reaction.
It turns out Chris did not know about the relationship. Chris was upset. He was visibly upset when he found out that Megan had had relations with Rob, but he maintained that he still loved her and that he'd never hurt her. Chris was sincere, and I believe that was true.
Both of them individually took polygraphs. The questions asked were very pointed, you know. Did you cause Megan's death? They were very straight up. They both passed.
When Chris and Rob's polygraph came in, it moved them down on the list of suspects. You can't really take them off the list of suspects. They're just simply too close to the victim. But it did move them down.
Putting Chris and Robbie on the back burner, detectives turned to the job offer Megan received the night she was killed. Could that have been connected to her death?
After the polygraph, I started mulling over Chris's interview and the original nuggets that he had given me about the job. He had told us that he thought that it had come in from a girl she had went to school with previously. He had said that I only remember her name is Naomi.
Investigators searched through school records and discover Megan had a classmate named Naomi Jones.
Finding her to talk to her about the possibility that she recommended this job to Megan was going to be very important. Had this job possibly led to her death? I went to Naomi's residence. I knocked on the door. Nobody there. I drug out my lawn chair and I sat in the front and I'm going to wait. I'm going to get this statement today. The neighbor kept looking over there like, who is this crazy guy? And I was like, you know, I need to talk to Naomi Jones. He knew the Joneses well enough to have called her. When talking to Naomi, I said, hey, you know, I'm Todd Hyman. I'm with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. I'm investigating the death of Megan Sharpton.
Naomi stated that, you know, she knew Megan. They wasn't close.
She had went to school with the year before in nursing school. I learned that they rode to clinicals maybe once together, and she offered up the fact that her husband had drove them. Further talking to her, I learned that she didn't really like Megan for whatever reason. She was very to the point and said, you know, I wouldn't recommend that girl for anything.
Naomi says she has no knowledge of Megan's job offer or her death. While investigators consider their next move, the autopsy report comes in, and it contains a surprising detail.
The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the face and blunt force trauma. She was burned, so the soot had kind of hid the wound.
Megan was shot what the medical examiner's office believes to be a .22 caliber round.
Her skull was broken in several pieces. It's very possible she was hit with a pistol and shot with a pistol.
The autopsy revealed she was deceased at the time of the fire.
She was purposefully burned in an attempt to hide evidence.
The autopsy indicates the fire was set shortly before Megan's body was discovered at 1:18 a.m. on July 2nd. Her time of death was likely before midnight.
Her last moments alive were pretty terrifying.
The report also confirms what police suspected at the scene.
The doctor that performed the autopsy said that there was a presence of sexual assault. There was DNA present. I started feeling like there could be a resolution more quickly with that piece of evidence.
The DNA is rushed to the crime lab for analysis. Then, 2 days after Megan's death, detectives get another possible lead.
July the 4th, there was a guy in the creek fishing who found Megan's purse along with her driver's license, social security card. We never did find her cell phone.
Megan's cell is still missing, but investigators order her phone records, hoping they might point to her killer. As the days start to pass by, Megan's family becomes anxious for answers.
10 days after they found her body, we decided to raise a reward for any information leading to the killer of Meg's case.
Many in town begin to wonder if Megan's murder is connected to another high-profile investigation.
It was the same time frame as the Holly Bobo case that was going on. It was a whodunit, just as ours. It was in Darden, Tennessee, which wasn't too far from here. And, you know, immediately some citizens would ask me, do you think there's any connection?
As detectives compare both cases, they have a chilling realization.
Holly Bobo was a nursing student also. She was abducted from her home. I don't believe her body had been recovered. We obviously had to look at the parallels. Was it a nursing student serial killer?
It's another lead and it's somewhere to go. You've got a killer running around. Who is he going to kill next?
Two weeks after Megan Sharpton was murdered, investigators are searching for a link to the unsolved disappearance of another nursing student in a nearby town a year earlier.
The Holly Bobo case became interest to us, and our investigators reached out to theirs. There was concern that we may be dealing with a serial killer.
While detectives from both cases work together to establish a link, rumors sweep through the community.
I was terrified to go out at night. I didn't like going places I wasn't familiar with, and I lived in fear almost of just everyone.
With Megan's killer still at large, the sense of loss begins to overwhelm her family.
I was really hoping that it would be solved pretty quickly because it was consuming Mom minute by minute. I could feel her emptiness when Megan passed away. She was never the same again.
It absolutely became a mission. I know if it had been my child, I would want somebody to have went that extra mile, to work that extra hour, to find the resolution to what had happened.
Finally, 3 weeks into the investigation, police get the results from the forensic search of Megan's vehicle.
It came back with no evidence. They didn't find anything that shouldn't have been there. There was nothing of value found.
Detectives hope tests on the DNA found inside Megan's body will yield better results. Her approximate time of death was before midnight, so investigators circle back to her boyfriend's alibi.
He said he was working at the time that happened.
Chris was working as a cashier on the evening shift. We go back and pull the video. He was in the store when Megan had been killed. This is not our guy.
Chris contacts police with a lead that sends the investigation in a new direction.
The original phone call about this job opportunity came into an older phone that Megan had.
Chris is able to locate the phone and shows it to detectives.
He was able to go back and find a number that he believed had called proposing this job.
When investigators run the phone number, they get a surprising result.
It was what we refer to as a burner phone.
The burner phone, the fake address, and the suspicious job opportunity all add up to what detectives suspected early on.
She was going to a fake job interview.
So if we could track that phone down, we could get to very possibly who the perpetrator was.
Because burner phones don't require a registered name, the number doesn't lead to anyone.
So I was able to at least track the phone to being sold at the department store here, and I called their loss prevention person. I was like, well, can you pull every one of these sales that was done?
There was like 11 or 12 burner phones purchased, and we pulled video.
We started looking at the males and the questionable ones, and just, you know, who looks like the most suspect person in these pictures.
One of the people paid for their phone, that burner phone, but they had their cell phone out on the camera. And just the demeanor and that just really caught Todd's attention.
It caught my attention big time. He's already got a cell phone. He's buying this burner phone for a reason. We were able to use the video from the department store to follow him from the purchase, out the door, into the parking lot. Almost off camera, we saw him approach a red pickup truck. Why would you park that far out unless you were trying to avoid detection? I take the pictures of this guy and I circulate it at other departments. Within minutes, I had an identification of who this was. This guy's name was Timothy Gifford.
Timmy Gifford is a local drug dealer, not the most honest person around.
I put the word out that I need to find Mr. Gifford. I felt like he was our guy or he was involved.
Officers soon track Timmy down and bring him to the station.
We set him down in the interview room. I show him, you know, the picture of him buying the phone.
We told him straight up, you're the killer, and we're going to have your DNA. And Timmy was, you know, he was stressed out.
He was like, you know, I'll tell you everything I know. I didn't do this. It wasn't me.
Timmy says he doesn't know Megan and denies speaking to her. When challenged about the burner phone, he tells police he bought it a month before the murder for someone else.
He's like, Donnie Jones. I was like, you gotta be kidding.
Donnie Jones was a police informant.
Donnie'd been a bad boy for a long time. He had a very long rap sheet, thefts and drugs.
Donnie Jones had served time before, and he had been accused of rape before. That right there was a real turn in investigation.
At first, detectives struggled to see how someone like Donnie could even be connected to Megan.
We found out that Donnie was married to Naomi Jones. That was another nugget that was very interesting.
Detectives had already talked to Naomi earlier in the investigation. She told police she did know Megan, but she had never recommended her for a job.
Naomi was somebody that Megan went to school with. They would carpool with each other occasionally. And we found out that Naomi's husband, Donnie Jones, would drive them if the weather was bad. Naomi's connected to a male with a criminal history, and he knew Megan Sharpton. There was a lot of aha moments in this case, but that was, we're going somewhere. We've got something here.
3 weeks after the murder of Megan Sharpton, detectives are interviewing Timmy Gifford. He tells police he bought the burner phone for Donnie Jones and divulges important details about the red truck seen in the surveillance footage.
Timmy Gifford said that the truck was Donnie's and that a few days after the murder, he had replaced all the interior. And I was like, ooh, that's probably my murder vehicle right there.
The carpet has been replaced. It's been completely detailed. That is a clue. that you may be on the right track.
Timmy also tells police Donnie traded the truck to his brother a week after the murder.
Everything is pointing towards Donnie Jones. As quick as we could, we got the search warrant, and we took the truck directly to the TBI crime lab.
Investigators have zeroed in on Donnie as a suspect and quickly pay him a visit.
In his initial statement to me, it was something to the effect of, I hardly know that girl.
I ain't never had no contact with her.
But you knew of her?
Yeah, I did know of her. I don't know much about her. I knew of her. When was the last time you talked to Megan? I ain't never talked to her. No, I take it back. When my old lady was going to school, one day they both needed to ride.
Donnie is adamant he had nothing to do with Megan's death.
His alibi was he was home with the kids.
I'm with my kids all the time. That's all I do. I got a 9-month-old and 7-year-old twin.
Without something concrete showing that he was home, his alibi didn't hold water. He could have left with the children, he could have left the children with somebody.
Detectives confront Donnie with Timmy's claims.
This guy said he gave you this phone, and this is the number, the last number to call her when she was alive.
He said he gave a phone to me?
Yeah.
He ain't gave me no phone.
I have nothing to hide. Y'all can search my house. Y'all can do it now.
We searched the house. We didn't come up with a lot of evidence. There was very little to be found.
Donnie also consents to provide a DNA sample. While they wait on the results, detectives get the forensics back on the red truck.
The truck had been cleaned, almost sanitized. Even the interior parts that I gathered off the search warrant, they didn't come back with any evidentiary value.
Megan's family is briefed on the new developments.
I saw the video surveillance of that person purchasing the burner cell phone. I saw somebody that none of us knew that had no association to Megan whatsoever. Todd had a name of the person who that burner cell phone was purchased for, and I just kind of shrugged my shoulders like, okay, who is this guy? Nothing made any sense to me.
4 weeks after Megan's murder, the crime lab sends investigators the results of the analysis on the DNA from Megan's autopsy.
We got a DNA hit.
And the hit come back, and it's Donnie Frank Jones.
A supervisor of mine called Donnie up, and he's like, hey, I need to meet with you.
Donnie comes down to the station where detectives confront him.
I said, did you and Megan Sharpton ever date? No. Did you and Megan Sharpton ever just hook up, one night stand, party or something? No. Were you and Megan Sharpton during this date, the date of the homicide? No. And then Todd asked, why would your DNA be inside of her? And it was just, his face went, just couldn't believe it.
He got very, very, very irate, mad. After he had a moment, Donnie said, I just had sex with her.
However, his initial statement of he had never been around her other than at one time kind of put him in a corner.
Detectives don't buy Donnie's story, but they'll need something more concrete to press charges.
All we can prove right now is he had sex with her.
That was a concern of the district attorney, is that, a consensual relationship could have left that evidence behind.
Investigators have no choice but to let Donnie go.
It was really frustrating for me.
I was in complete disbelief. It was infuriating that he said it was consensual, and so he was allowed to walk free as they put the pieces together.
Hoping to prove who was with Megan when she was murdered, detectives run a detailed search on 4 phones: Megan's, Donnie's, Timmy's, and the burner.
We asked for cell phone GPS analysis. They can take some technical data and plot it out on a map and show you to some certainty an area where a phone call was made. We're in kind of a waiting pattern, hoping for phone records for the silver bullet to kind of put this thing away.
The cell phone analysis will take weeks, but investigators get a chance to get Donnie off the streets when they discover a rifle in the trunk of his car.
Donnie's a convicted felon. A convicted felon cannot possess firearms.
Even though the rifle is determined not to be the murder weapon, it's enough to arrest Donnie. Now detectives must establish if he killed Megan Sharpton.
We got him into custody. We had the DNA, but at the same time, we needed more. We needed as much as we possibly could get.
It's all theoretical until you can prove he murdered her.
4 months after Megan's murder, investigators receive the detailed phone data and find a clear link between Megan and her killer.
And I was just ecstatic. It's hell yeah.
I met with Kelly, and I told her in person, I know who killed your daughter.
Four months after the savage murder of Megan Sharpton, detectives have used cell phone GPS data to prove who killed the 24-year-old nursing student.
That's Donnie Jones.
On the night of the murder, the burner phone, I will refer to it as the murder phone, and Donnie's phone, they were in or about the same location. Timmy's phone is not involved. The murder phone and Megan's phone are talking to one another. And the cell phone records will show they were coming in contact with one another, and then they both stopped where her car was found. And I think at that time is when she was abducted. Using the cell phone data, we was able to show that at first that Donnie was close to the place where we believe she was abducted at. Then that he was close to the place I believe that he killed her at, and then that he was close to where the body was found.
Donnie's family owned several farms in that area, and that's where we felt like that she was murdered.
They gave us permission to search that area, and it's an extremely secluded place.
Investigators make a telling discovery.
There was a burn barrel there that caught my eye. I found a purple scarf with black stars on it. It was later identified by her sister, Carrie, as a gift that she had given Megan. I went from an absolute whodunit to this guy might have done it to, oh, this guy definitely done it.
The overwhelming evidence is what made the DA take that step to indict him.
I was elated. I went to the Coffee County Sheriff's Department and had him brought up, and I arrested him.
On November 5th, 2012, Donnie Jones is charged with first-degree murder, rape, and 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping.
One attorney, that was it. He had no more to say.
Never would I have thought it would wind up like this. When Donnie was charged, Mom, she was still pretty overwhelmed, but it was a relief to start learning that we were going to get the details of what events led up to that day.
Based on the evidence collected, investigators pieced together how Donnie lured and then murdered Megan. It paints a disturbing picture of a calculating predator.
So while looking into the murder phone, we started backtracking all the numbers that it had called. And there was a pattern. Everyone that was called with that phone was someone that was sitting with the elderly or doing some kind of nursing in-home service. The murder phone was used just seeking out a victim. Donnie had reached out to Megan. He knew well enough to go in his wife's phone and get her number out, and that's how all this started.
She had known Donnie and his wife, not close friends, but knew them. She answered that call from Donnie.
Megan was on her way to a job that didn't exist. The directions she had got were not good. She had to call our suspect.
He met her, at which time he abducted her and went back to one of the family's farms.
Megan Sharpson's last few minutes of life was pure hell and panic and fear.
He raped her and shot her. Megan was beaten prior to being killed. He moved her from there to where he set her body on fire to try to hide his crimes. And then he went home and acted like nothing happened.
Donnie Jones is just a cold-blooded killer, sexual deviant, cold-blooded killer.
7 months after Megan's murder, Donnie Jones pleads guilty, and on February 4th, 2013, he's sentenced to life without parole.
I feel like there will never be enough done to him. He's sick, he's a monster. There is no reasonable explanation why he did it.
There was a sense of accomplishment that we'd moved so fast in finding out who killed her. Had we not have caught him, he would have reoffended.
Detectives do determine Megan's murder was not connected to the Holly Bobo case.
There was 4 people arrested in the Holly Bobo case. It had nothing to do with my case.
If Megan hadn't lost her life, I feel very confident that Donnie Jones would still be out, trying to trick young women. Megan put him behind bars for life. She sacrificed her life to keep everybody else in our community safe.
Despite getting justice for Megan, the Sharpton family suffers another tragedy just 9 months later in November 2013.
Mom took her life 16 months after Megan's death. Her heart was just incredibly broken, and she made the choice. She wanted to be with Megan.
Yeah, he essentially killed them both. Sure did.
Our family time, that's when I missed her the most. I missed that laugh. You just heard Meg's laugh, you would be having a much better day. I miss those specific moments, those milestones that she's not gonna get to be a part of.
I thought Megan and I would be friends for, on into adulthood. We were supposed to be together forever, as best friends, as sidekicks. She was not someone you could forget. There was a memorial placed on the side of the road where she was found, and it's this beautiful giant star sculpture. It's very cool, and Megan would absolutely love it.